Good afternoon, youth of Bermuda. I am thrilled to welcome you to the grand virtual finale of the 2023 BUEI Youth Climate Summit. I'm Noelle Young, your local sustainability solutionist and proud representative as Bermuda's first female Younger youth delegate. I apologize now for any coughing or sneezing or sputtering on my part as I'm still fighting off the flu. But as we embark on this virtual journey together today, I can't help but imagine the incredible energy we'll share when we meet face-to-face tomorrow. The power of collaboration and shared passion for environmental change is so powerful and exciting. Before we dive into the agenda planned for today, I just want to mention something vital. Sorry. Our upcoming action project to Cooper's Island on Saturday. William will probably elaborate on this, but I want to remind you that it's not just an event. It's a chance to turn our ideas into impactful actions. So a quick reminder to ensure those permission slips are signed by your parents if you're under 18. We want a united front, a powerful force for change. And each one of you plays a critical role in making that happen. So together, let's create ripples of change that extend far beyond the summit, because every action, no matter how small, contributes to the larger movement for a sustainable future. That's how we make history, right? So let's keep the momentum going, and I will pass the mic to my co-host, who will introduce himself and guide us through the agenda we have in store for today.
Oh, pardon me, folks. I'm afraid I was muted just there. Welcome back, folks. My name is William Campbell, and thank you very much for being with us this afternoon. I'm working on climate resilience development here in Bermuda, and I'm a local volunteer with Bermuda is Love as well. So to cover today's agenda, we are once again going to be hearing from our 2022 YCS Bermuda alumni on the conservation project team, Leeya, Jeremy, Aron, Lugo, and Zoe Meir, who are going to share with us some of the work they've been doing in the last year. Then after that, we're going to ask you guys to choose your track as well from the listed conservation, sustainability, and climate justice options we'd like you to undertake projects and work with. After then, we're going to be hearing from our youth activist for the day, Mikaela Loach, and then from our subject matter expert for the day, Mr. Bodhi Patil as well. So once again, as Noelle has said, please do ensure that you have had your waiver signed for Cooper's Island Project Action trip. Those have either been emailed to you or you can have it with you printed, but you must have it in order to attend. Once again, thank you so much all for joining us, and we're going to turn over in just a second to our first Menti poll, just to break the ice once again. So back over to Noelle at this point.
All right, guys. So our first poll question of the day takes us to the heart of our collective mission. So in the spirit of fostering meaningful dialogue and envisioning a world where youth climate activism catalyzes profound change, can you please tell me where you think youth climate activism can have the greatest impact? So there should be a link to menti.com in the chat, or you can go to menti.com in another browser window. And our code for today is 85801288. And a quick reminder to please leave the Menti window open so that you can use it again for all of our other Menti polls during today's session. All right, and we've got some answers rolling in. Let's see, we've got 15 people for pollution. And that's going up. So a good majority of you think that climate activism can have a big impact on pollution. And just after that is sustainability. I find it interesting we don't have any for biodiversity yet. Okay, keep the responses rolling in, guys. You're doing a great job. All right, and pollution keeps going up. Well, that's great. That means a lot of you actually have, the same ideals that we can make a huge impact on the amount of pollution on our island. And sustainability is kind of a second, not a close second, but a second. All right, I believe there are about 90 of you in this room today. So let's keep the responses rolling in. And teachers, I know that some of you are managing classrooms of people. Thank you very much for that. Ensure we get all those responses in. Okay. All right, so I think we're going to move on. All right, let's transition straight into our interactive Menti word cloud. So our thought-provoking question for the day is, how do you personally define conservation? So have a quick think. What does conservation really mean to you? Click the link in the chat if you don't already have it open. Submit 1 or 2 words about what conservation really means to you. And again, if you can't access the Menti, you can put your responses in the chat and William and I will add them for you. Great response time today. You guys are on point. Thank you. All right, so saving water is the largest set of words we have today, which is great. Energy is a close second. I'm also seeing maintenance, which is perfect. Again, that is, a feature of circular economy, which is a lot more sustainable than linear economy. I'm seeing communicating, waste less, protection, conservation, but energy is still our biggest one. That's great. All right, so I'm going to show you BUEI's working definition of conservation. So they define it as the act of safekeeping resources for present and future generations. Again, if you have comments outside of the polls that we're asking you, please feel free to put them in the chat. Okay. Up next, we have our final group of local alumni from last year's Youth Climate Summit. Leeya Jeremy, Aron Lugo, and Zoe Mir. So before we begin our conversation with them, I'd like to kind of shift the focus a bit. I know we keep encouraging you to post questions in the chat, but I came to the realization yesterday that there may be more that you'd like to contribute, like statements or words of encouragement, or even just agreements with the ongoing discussions. So today, I want to encourage you to actively support our local youth activists. Use your own voices in whatever way feels authentic to you. This is an inclusive dialogue where everyone is welcome to express themselves. So, celebrate our local activists who are championing your causes, but most importantly, trust in yourself and the impact that your voice can have. Let's see, let's get started. Aron, can you please introduce yourself?
Good afternoon. My name is Aron Lugo. I'm from the Berkeley Institute and I am 14 years old.
Great to meet you. Leeya, your turn.
Hi, my name is Leeya Jeremy. I'm 14 years old and I go to Cedar Bridge Academy.
Fantastic. And Zoe, you're up next.
Hi, my name is Zoe Mir. I'm 14 years old and I'm at George School in Pennsylvania, but I attended Summersfield Academy.
All right, Zoe, thank you for taking the time to speak to us today. How did you get involved in climate action?
I've always been really interested in climate action and protecting the environment, but I first heard about the Youth Climate Summit a year before I was eligible to participate, but I kept with it. I made sure I came back the next year and it kind of continued on from there.
That's really interesting. So how did it make you feel not being of age for participation?
I was really disappointed because it was something I really wanted to do, but I knew I could come back next year, but I wish I had gotten the opportunity to do it when I was ready.
That's understandable, definitely. Leeya, what about you? How did you get involved in climate action?
Much like Zoe, I heard about it when I was in middle school, and I was unfortunately too young to attend. But my next year, my first year of high school, I was able to come in person, and it was a really great experience.
Okay, so that's really interesting. Can you tell me a bit about how it made you feel not being of age to participate?
I was disappointed as well because I did really want to do it that year, but it made me feel better that I was going to be able to do it the next year anyways.
Okay, and Aron, I have the same question for you. So how did you get involved in climate action?
So I did hear from a teacher, and it was the year that I was eligible to join. So I did, and it was honestly a great experience, and it was very eye-opening.
Thank you for that answer. Aron, what's one activity or initiative that you're most proud of introducing and why?
An activity that I'm most proud of would be installing the LED light bulbs for the community members, because some of them, they didn't realize that they had LED light bulbs. And there are certain ways that you can test if you have them. One would be to touch the light bulb. If it's hot, then you know that you do not have LED light bulbs. And you always have to make sure that you use your LED light bulbs in the areas that you use most frequently.
That's a great tip. Thank you. Leeya, what's one activity, initiative, or some work that you're most proud of introducing and why?
I would say I'm most proud of the work that we did with Be Solar on the roundtable when we were discussing energy efficiency and better ways to conserve light energy in your household, installing solar panels or turning off your water heater at certain points.
Okay, was there like a pivotal moment for you in that, something that really inspired you? Because that kind of sounds like intergenerational collaboration a bit.
I would say when we saw the layout for Bermuda College's solar plan and how they were planning on distributing the different panels around and showing us like the different parts of the building and how they were working on it, that was really eye-opening for me, and I really liked seeing how they actually plan and develop everything before it actually happens.
That sounds really inspiring. Thank you for sharing that. Zoe, what is one activity or initiative you are most proud of introducing and why?
I think I'm most proud of the work that we did with the conservation group last year in protecting coral reefs, because we got to educate younger students about it at BUEI World Oceans Day. We made a coral reef diorama, and I was able to share the knowledge about protecting coral reefs to students who are going to probably eventually go on to participate in the Youth Climate Summit, which is a really cool experience. And I also enjoyed listening the other way around to experts in the field who are currently working to protect coral reefs and to rebuild them and regrow them on slabs of concrete in the ocean. So that was really interesting, and I enjoyed that.
So that is really cool. That was a ton of intergenerational collaboration right there, but also you teaching the younger generation is amazing. That's admirable. Thank you so much. Zoe, let's see. Yeah. Guys, keep your questions coming in the chat. Let's see, was your work or involvement considered advocacy or activism, Zoe?
I think it was a bit of both. I think both are really important. Of course, activism, you need to actually go out and do it, and I enjoyed that a lot. But at the same time, if you don't spread the word about what you're doing, you can never have as large an impact as you would like. So I think my work was a bit of both.
Fantastic. Aron, what about you? Do you consider your work to be advocacy or activism?
Mine would definitely have to be activism. It's kind of both loud and quiet activism because we're out there doing stuff and actually changing the environment, which would be loud, but we're also talking to people privately, one-on-one sessions, which is quiet activism.
And all of those personal connections can be really valuable. Leeya, do you consider your work to be advocacy or activism?
I would say a bit of both, but mostly advocacy because I more so enjoyed the parts where we got to go out and actually speak to people about how we wanted to pursue conserving and sustainable perspectives in like the workforce and their environment more so than their activism.
Okay. Do you feel like the work that you've done in the community was really beneficial? Like, were people willing to listen?
I do think so, yes. People coming together and being able to share their different aspects on how they would like to better their environment, and then to be able to just bring it all into one space was really helpful, and it was really inspiring and eye-opening.
Okay. And what about you, Aron? Do you feel like people were really willing to listen to your cause?
Most definitely, because people really want to change their ways of conserving things and sustaining things. So it was really it was more easy to get them to listen to us because we're also the younger generation. And it's not like every day you see younger people doing these things in the world.
Very true. And I mean, youth that live by the sea are going to be most impacted by climate change issues. And Zoe, the same question for you. Do you feel that the community was willing to listen to your cause?
I do think so. I worked a lot with people on both sides, and I think that it was great to see younger students, especially because they were so enthusiastic about learning about coral reefs and climate change and how they can improve our world. And I think that's going to be one of the most important things that we can do here is to make sure that the younger generation is set up for success.
I agree wholeheartedly. Let's see. Aron, was there a person or organization that inspired you most during the Youth Climate Summit?
A person that inspired me would have to be Little Miss Flint from the first YCS. She was one of the younger people to speak to us, and it was very impactful to see what she was doing in her community to make a difference.
That's amazing. And what about you, Leeya? Was there a person or organization that inspired you most during the Youth Climate Summit?
I would say for me, definitely Rain Sullivan from last year's group of activists. His story was really appealing to me. I really liked how he talked about what he was doing for his environment and what we could do like as the same.
I have met Rain in person, and he is amazing. He is another youth activist who is from an island nation. And I think that speaks volumes. Zoe, what person or organization inspired you most during the Youth Climate Summit?
I think all the YCS alumni from last year, when I was in the summit last year, it was just amazing to see how far they had gone and the opportunities they had taken and what could be done with the Youth Climate Summit, even though we might not have as much power as like if in people in the government who are older, but we can still make a difference, and that is what the YCS alumni showed me last year. And so I'm very happy to be here.
Yes, and I think youth empowering and championing other youth is the way that we're going to get this done. So I have a question in the chat, but I want to show some images from your field trips first. So let's run those, and let's see. What field trip did you enjoy most, Aron?
It was definitely the field trip to Bart's Island, where we got to go snorkeling and seeing all the different projects that were water-based, which were the seagrass project, where they placed cages on top of the seagrass, which would stop the turtles from eating all of the seagrass, but it will also allow the seagrass to grow. It was very nice, and like what it is like, it's honestly a great place to be. And it's really enjoyable.
That's great. And you know what? Honestly, like your excitement about it is infectious. So thank you. And Leeya, what field trip did you enjoy most?
I enjoyed the AXA XL trip that we did. It was really, really cool. And the tour guide that we had, he answered all of our questions. He was really animated and excited to like show us around, teaching us about like the water wells and how they use their seawater to cool down the building, and different ways that they're able to conserve. I also enjoyed our networking and careers evening that we had at Taste Bistro. It was really nice. We got to meet some awesome people.
Yeah, I also really enjoyed that. That was nice.
That's cool. And shout out to our sponsors, HSBC and AXA XL, for making this all possible. All right, Zoe, what field trip did you enjoy most?
My favorite field trip was definitely the trip to Nonsuch Island, where we participated in a beach cleanup and we got to learn about all sorts of endemic and native species growing on the island. And it was just amazing to see some place that would have looked exactly like it would have in 1609 when the first settlers arrived. That was really amazing, but at the same time it was interesting because the beach was covered with mountains and mountains of trash. Even though Nonsuch Island is so protected, like we had to scrub our shoes with bleach as we came onto the island, and there were still mountains of trash. And I think that just shows that this is a global problem and we need to make a bigger impact than the one we are already doing. And that is really important. And another opportunity that I think helps with that is Young Reporters for the Environment competition, which just started in Bermuda. And I entered and I wrote an article about Nonsuch Island and the problems with plastic pollution that we are facing. And I think things like that are what is really going to make a difference.
I agree. So we're a little bit over time. So what I'm going to do is I'll take one of the questions from the chat. In one word, Aron, can you tell me what made you want to do the Youth Climate Summit?
The experience.
All right, Leeya, what about you? In one word, what made you want to do YCS?
The people, I guess.
Okay, and Zoe, what about you?
Opportunity.
Thank you so much for your time, guys. We appreciate you, and we hope to see you soon. All right, so let's see. It's time to consider selecting your path. So which activation group are you interested in joining? Your choices will include sustainability, conservation, and climate justice. So look in the chat for the link and submit your preference. You can expect to receive confirmation by Friday regarding which group you'll be in. And if you have any questions, send them in the chat. And I'm gonna put some music on while we wait. Okay, so I am going to switch with William so that he can introduce our youth activists for the day. I'll see you guys soon.
Okay, thank you very much, Noelle. Much appreciated, and I hope you guys have all filled out your track selection processes. Once again, if your first preference isn't selected, we're very sorry about that, but we will find a place for you. Now, to introduce our first youth activist for the day, we've got Miss Mikaela Loach joining us. She's the best-selling author of It's Not That Radical: Climate Action to Transform Our World. She's a climate justice activist, the co-host of the Yikes podcast, and a writer and a fourth-year medical student based in Brighton as well. And her work focuses on the very important and all-encompassing intersections of the climate crisis with oppressive systems and making the climate movement a more accessible space. Please join me in welcoming Mikaela.
Hi everyone. So lovely to see a couple faces, but I totally appreciate people not wanting to put their cameras on. And I wish I could see you all in person, but thank you all so much for taking the time out to hear from me and many other people. I really enjoyed hearing a bit of what the previous alumni was saying about what they've appreciated about the Youth Climate Summit. So let me just quickly start sharing my screen. So hopefully Zoom will work with me. There we go. And I will begin my presentation. So as I was kindly introduced by William, my name is Mikaela Loach. I'm a climate justice activist, Jamaican British climate justice activist. So I was born in Jamaica, and I'll be talking about that a bit more. I'm the co-host of this podcast called Yikes, and the author of this book called It's Not That Radical: Climate Action to Transform Our World. I was also a claimant on a court case against the UK government, which the campaign around it was called Paid to Pollute, and I'll be talking about that a bit later as well. And I was part of the Stop Cambo, well, I still am part of Stop Cambo, Resist Glencore, the UK Black Ecofeminist Collective, and the Fossil Free Books campaign as well. And I'll be speaking a little bit about each of those. And I also use social media for change and reach millions of people every single month talking about climate justice and transforming our world. So, as I mentioned, I was born in Jamaica, which is a small island in the Caribbean. So in a similar way, I guess, also from an island. But we moved to the UK when I was about 2.5, 3 years old. That's a picture of me is probably actually more than 3 at that age on the beach. I must have been visiting my grandparents when that was taken. But from a really young age, so I think in this photo I was about 2 years old, and I was listening to my brother in my mum's belly, pretending to be a doctor already. I knew I wanted to do something with my life that was going to help people. And yeah, from a very, very young age, I think especially having Caribbean parents, I wanted to be a doctor, and I thought that's what I wanted to do. And that's what I understood as a way to help people. And, you know, spoiler, I then went to medical school because at school I was told that if you want to help the world, if you want to change things, become a doctor. That's a good thing to do. I've learned that there are loads of other things that you can do. You do not have to just be a doctor. You do not have to just go to medical school. But growing up, that's what I think I was told a lot of schools, that's what you should do. But then as a teenager, I remember very clearly that in the newspapers in the UK, I'm not sure if it was also in the newspapers in Bermuda at the time as well, in around 2016. If you remember, I moved to the UK from Jamaica when I was only about 2.5 years old, nearly 3. In 2016, there was a photograph that I won't show here, but you can find if you Google, on the cover of most newspapers in the UK, which was of the body of a young boy named Alan Kurdi, who was 3 years old when his family and himself drowned trying to make the way to Europe from Syria. So like me, Alan was 3 years old. Like me, Alan and his family were just wanting to have a safer and better life. Like me, they were moving because of safety, wanting to move somewhere safer. Obviously, I was not fleeing war or conflict, but in a similar way, we moved to the UK for safety, which is why I grew up where I did. But unlike me, Alan was not offered a safe or legal route to move to the UK. That was not offered to his family. And the only reason that it was offered to me was because of the privilege of having a British father. My father was British, so when I was born, I was given a British passport, and through the lottery of where you're born and what passport you get, I was offered safety, and Alan and his family were not. And that felt really unjust to me. And the reality of how unjust our borders are and how unjust these systems are was really made clear to me in the similarities and the huge differences between my experience and Alan's experience. And so I started campaigning for refugee rights and for migrant rights in the UK, and went to the border of the UK and France in Calais. So that's where that photo on the left is, me and my mum. I think I was like 16 maybe at the time. And we went to Calais to support our displaced siblings there. So, I mean, all of us globally are connected. There's something I'll talk about a bit later. I think it's important we see each other as our kin. And basically what we did there was just kind of chop wood and fold clothes and chop vegetables. It was very mundane and easy and simple, but really, really impactful to help make people's lives a bit safer, and to offer people the dignity that people should have in these situations. So that was my first kind of experience of campaigning, was when I was a teenager. So maybe a similar age to some of you who are watching, maybe a bit older than some of you, and just some of you are much more ahead of where I was. But then, so I was really passionate about migrant rights and migrant justice. But at this point, I wasn't really thinking about the climate crisis that much, because to me, I'd seen climate advocacy or climate work as something for people who didn't have something more pressing to worry about, to talk about. I saw the climate crisis still as a future issue, and that my community in particular, like the Black community in the UK in particular, like migrating communities, had more pressing struggles, things like police brutality, things like violent borders. They felt more pressing and more urgent and more present than the climate crisis. And then I went back to Jamaica to live for a while. I spent more time with my grandmother, who's in this photo, who's one of my favorite people in the whole world. And I started to see the impacts of the climate crisis on Jamaica. In particular, I saw the impacts of rising sea levels and of hurricanes on Helsha Beach. So I think I could be wrong, but the first picture I showed, I think, might have been at Helsha Beach when I was too young. It's been too long that my parents can't remember if it exactly was, but I spent a lot of time at this beach growing up. So the restaurants that you can see in the bottom photo, they sell festivals and fried fish and all of the best food that exists. And on the beach, people were always playing music. I would swim in that sea. I had so many of my favorite memories that still tether me to my home happened at this beach. And the first picture at the top is the beach kind of like as I remember it, and the picture underneath is the beach how it is now. Water has started to come up, and it's even further higher than this now, actually. And it's starting to submerge the restaurants that sit on stilts. And I think I realized the climate crisis is not a future threat. It's happening here, and it's happening now. And how much longer will my family be safe? My grandma only lives 10 minutes drive from Helsha Beach. So many other communities live so much closer. And so it felt really important to tackle this crisis, because it's also displacing people today, and it links these other issues that I care about so much. And so I got involved in direct action. So this is some photos of me during, and I'm realizing time is going, so I'm going to pick up the pace. But so I got involved with campaigning with a group called Extinction Rebellion Scotland. And we occupied the roads outside of our parliament in Westminster for 2 weeks. And that's me. I camped in that tent. It was very cold in October, in the road, blocking the roads to call out our politicians for their lack of adequate climate policy. And I even put myself in an arrestable position by locking myself onto infrastructure to prevent our camp from being moved. And our site was called Power and Truth, and it was to raise awareness for the fact that the UK government give billions of public money to oil and gas companies every single year. So the same companies that are causing this crisis are getting given money that could be being spent on hospitals, on schools, on things that actually improve our lives. And they're being given that by the government that's meant to be protecting us. So after taking this, which felt like a last resort action of direct action and campaigning in this way, I then took another last resort action, which was legal action. So along with others, this is Jeremy here, and this is Karen. The three of us, we took the UK government to court over these huge public payments, these huge subsidies, over the fact that the UK government have given over £5 billion of public money to North Sea oil and gas companies, which promotes them in polluting. And in our court case, the government had previously said that they weren't giving these subsidies. They denied that. But then in court, they were forced to admit the truth that they have been giving these payments, they have been giving these subsidies. And since then, it's been really helpful for campaigners to be able to tackle this issue adequately because the information is out there in public now. Also at the same time, I was part of this campaign called the Stop Cambo campaign to stop the Cambo oil field from being approved. And in just 6 months, we managed to get Shell, one of the biggest oil companies in the world, to pull out from producing this field, which means that Cambo is no closer to being extracted from. That's 180 million barrels of oil that have been left in the ground because of our campaigning. And that was in just 6 months. And it was hundreds, if not thousands of people who were involved with that campaigning. That's us delivering the petition that was signed by over 80,000 people to 10 Downing Street, which is where the Prime Minister lives. There was a concerted media campaign. This photo on the left is from when we occupied the UK government building. There was lots of different tactics that went into making this happen. And in the end, not only did Shell pull out from the field because they said that we'd made it uninvestable, but also the other company, Single Point Energy, they also were forced to pull out because they said that they were unable to find another company who'd be willing to extract from it because of activist pressure that had been put on. So the pressure that we put on really, really matters, and it's really, really important. Okay, and then I don't have full time to talk about this slide, so but I will just say that my work has also brought me into lots of different places and to challenge lots of different power structures, including when Bill Gates invited me to his event speaking on how billionaires should not exist and that billionaire philanthrocapitalism, so the way that billionaires have a hold on the solutions that are being pursued, it's going to prevent us from being able to adequately tackle any of these problems, because if, for example, Bill Gates and Microsoft are producing the climate crisis, they should not be the ones in control of the solutions to it. But that could be a whole other presentation. So all of that together brought me to writing my book, It's Not That Radical: Climate Action to Transform Our World, which I'll go through very quickly, why I ended up in the climate movement and why I think climate justice is so important. So how do we frame climate justice? So you might have heard a bit about this already, and maybe this is going to make some of you excited to sign up for the climate justice track if you haven't already. But climate justice is a framework which understands that how the climate crisis impacts people is dependent upon systems of oppression. So people are not impacted equally by the climate crisis. The climate crisis is not the great equalizer, but it's the great multiplier. It multiplies existing inequalities and oppressions. So, for example, humans in poorer countries are around 5 times more likely than those in richer countries to be displaced by sudden extreme weather events. And then even if we talk about poorer and richer, we have to interrogate that. Why do we label some countries as poor and some as rich, when actually many countries that are labeled as poor are just overexploited, whereas the countries that are rich overexploit these countries, making them poor. And there's a relationship there that we have to be aware of, and that's really important when we talk about climate justice. And so it shows us that we might be in the same storm, but we are most definitely not all in the same boat. So in that way, it demands of us that we interrogate the foundations of this world, how it came to be, and why we hold on to structures that devalue the lives of billions of our siblings globally. So structures that say that it's all right for the majority of people in this world to be living in insecurity and poverty and being unable to have a safe home or safe water or food, whereas a few amount of people are given more than they could ever have. And so then we asked us to look at globally at places that are seen as sacrifice zones, so the communities that are seen as like being able to be sacrificed. So these are 2 examples that I, because of time, won't be able to get into fully, but if you ask me a question about them, I'm happy to go into them. But one of those areas is the Niger Delta in Nigeria, and that's where Shell have operated since the colonial period, since that they bought the entire country from the British colonial projects. And the life expectancy in Nigeria is only 40 years of age because of the health impacts. In the Niger Delta, is 40 years of age because of the health impacts. And that's 15 years younger than the life expectancy of the country as a whole. And that's because of the impacts of the oil industry there. Another example is El Cerrejón in Colombia, the Yucca indigenous community and Wayu indigenous communities that live next to this mega mine, which is bigger than Paris, this mine alone. These communities experience extreme poverty, and many children every year die because of the impacts of it. Whereas the company, in a similar way with Shell and with Niger Delta, the companies that run these mines concentrate their wealth in the global north, in Europe in particular, whilst they cause harm to the peoples in the global south who live there. And so we have to interrogate and understand whiteness to understand this properly. We have to understand that we have a system globally which puts some people's lives as more important or more valuable than others. And interrogating whiteness as a power system is so, so important for understanding this. We also have to interrogate other power systems that put hierarchies on people's lives. We have to interrogate capitalism. We have to interrogate colonialism. We have to interrogate imperialism. These power structures that make it so that only a small amount of people are allowed power and safety at the top, whereas the majority are below. And I could obviously speak a lot more on all of this, but please do ask me questions about it. And these systems, these systems of whiteness, these systems of hierarchies tell us why even within global north countries, those who are already racially marginalized or oppressed are more likely to experience the worst impacts. For example, how Black Americans are 3 times more likely to die from exposure to air pollutants than their white counterparts. And the same is seen in the UK as well, on Black communities in the UK. But so you might be thinking this seems really doomy and terrible, but actually I think that what this shows us is a route out. This shows us, this is what I find exciting to me, is the fact that the climate crisis is connected to systems of oppression means that in order to tackle the climate crisis adequately, we have to tackle these same systems. And therefore we get to truly transform the world around us. We get to make a better world. And the Lancet saw this as well, and I think I've run out of time, so I might not be able to talk about this, but if I can have 1 minute. The Lancet saw this too, so it's not just me saying this. And this is what actually gave me so much hope, and this is what keeps me going and why I got into climate work and have incorporated all the kind of activism work that I do under climate. They saw that at first they described the climate crisis, as many of us have heard it so many times, the greatest threat to global health of the 21st century. But in just 2 years later, in their next report on climate and health, they actually described it as the greatest opportunity for global health. And that framing from threat to opportunity is really important, because tackling that climate crisis adequately, we can actually create a better world for all of us, and we can actually improve health outcomes and create something better. It's not just about stopping the bad stuff, it's about creating good things and making better things as well. So we have the opportunity to restructure our entire world so that it makes sense, so that it's better for all of us. And this framing is so important for how we communicate about this crisis. And so it doesn't have to just be about survival, it's an opportunity to make something better. So we have to challenge all these systems. It's so, so important that we do. We don't just want to make a green version of this world. And to do that, we have to build movements and power. And we have to imagine. Our imagination is so, so powerful. And I'll leave you with this quote that you can read on the screen whilst we are doing some Q&As. It's from Rebecca Sonnet. And thank you so much for listening. Sorry that I had to speed through that. But for me, it's so important that I get like the theory as well as just telling my story as well. But thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much, Mikaela, for that. I'm afraid we don't have as much time as we would like for questions, but I would encourage everyone as well to please reach out to you and to inquire as to all the questions they might have for you as well. Thank you very much for everything, especially the theory that you've addressed with us. As a war and conflict student in the climate space as well, this is exactly the place that I come to this too. So as well, for everyone selecting the climate justice track, I look forward to sharing this discussion with you further in the future. Thank you so much, Mikaela. And once again, I encourage everyone listening to please engage with Mikaela's literature, with every point that she has brought up today. Again, it is crucial to understanding the situation we're in and the legacy of where we are and what we must do to unpack it and address climate action too. So thank you so much, Mikaela. Once again, I'm afraid I do have to cut us off at that time, but we do take note of all the questions that are there, and I do encourage everyone to please reach out to Mikaela to discuss with her further. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, at this time, I do have to pass on to Noelle as well to address the movement program that is being undertaken here in Bermuda before we turn on to our next youth climate activist, Bodhi. Noelle?
All right, guys. So I have a quick video to play for you from the Ministry of Environment about a new platform called Movement.
Imagine Bermuda's shoreline retreating, losing our beloved beaches and low-lying shoreline to the relentless sea. This is what will happen with a 2-meter sea level rise, threatening 14% of our island. As climate change progresses, Bermuda might face an ironic twist. Slower-moving hurricanes could cause more damage by lingering longer, leading to intense flooding and sustained winds that test even our island's sturdy infrastructure. So here's the deal. The Ministry of Home Affairs is opening the doors to an interactive journey, and you're our guest.
It's your turn to step up to the plate. Do you want to leave a mark? Well, it's game time. Discover Bermuda Environmental Action, BEA. It's a call to all you game changers to join forces in saving our island and keeping Bermuda's environment thriving and healthy. Embark on quests that'll send your pulse soaring. Plunge into the Ocean Health Campaign and be a volunteer in the beach cleanup mission. Or rise as a champion for our threatened pals by facing down the lionfish horde, turning them from hunters to the hunted when you add them to your dinner plate. Then, become a powerhouse of the clean energy revolution by transforming your home into a beacon of efficiency with cool, energy-saving LED lights. So, what's it going to be? Are you in? Hit up the BEA platform and let's turn this into the ultimate level up for our planet. Get ready to mobilize your friends and give your best for Mother Earth. The future's not just in your hands, it's at your fingertips. Sign up here, scan the QR code, or go to bea.bm. Join us and let's make this movement massive. Together, we are better.
All right. Thank you to Bermuda's Ministry of Environment as well for putting together the movement, and to the BEA, which I encourage everyone here to engage with too. So once more, we're going to hear from our next subject matter expert who's going to join us today. Oh, pardon me. I'm afraid. Yep, I'm afraid we are going to go over to Noelle, who's going to host some more questions, actually, as we do apparently have some time for that.
All right, guys. So I feel that it's super important that we hear what Mikaela has to say. So I've switched up the program a bit. There are tons of questions for you in the chat. And I would like to know, what do you think kids 13 to 16 can do to help?
Thank you so much. I think there's so much that kids 13 to 16 can do. Like, you can join a group that exists already. Maybe you could form one as part of this. You're with loads of other young people right now who really, really care about these issues as well. They've taken time out to be here and learn about them. Maybe there's something really specific in your community that you can see. Find other people who care about it too, and start campaigning in whatever that looks like. And you can learn from how other people have campaigned. You can learn from other things, but you can also do it in your own specific way. And I think that being part of a group is what's the most important thing that you can do. And you'll learn so much more in community with each other. And I really think you don't need to wait at all to take action. You can do it right now.
Thank you. That is really inspiring advice. Did being a female influence the way that people saw you?
I think for sure. Yeah. I mean, I think I lean into it in the way that I dress in all pink ridiculous outfits all the time. Because we have to just be our full selves. But there is definitely a level of people underestimate women often. But I think that if we look through history, a lot of the leaders of movements that I look to were all women. Like one of the first people who inspired me so much was Nanny of the Maroons, who was a freedom fighter in Jamaica. And she taught me that you don't, in the face of injustice, you don't just sit down and wait for other people to save you. You save yourself, and with other people, and you join in movements. And Angela Davis is someone else who really, really inspires me. So I think there are so many powerful women that we can look up to. But I think also there's space for people of all genders to be part of this movement and to use their uniqueness to push forward change that we need. And we need everyone, and therefore we need to reach other people. And so maybe some people will be reached by my ridiculous pinkness, other people might not. So it's important that we have a lot of different people.
I love that. All right. So what is the biggest thing you've done on your journey? Like, what are you most proud of? What was that momentous occasion that solidified everything for you?
That's a really good question. I actually think I was reflecting the other day, and strangely, I think that some people might think that maybe taking the government to court or winning the Cambo campaign was like kind of the big thing, or even writing the book. But I think the moment I felt most proud of myself was when I sat down in a space where I was, so at the Gates Foundation event in particular, where I was in a room where I wasn't sure that my words were going to be listened to, or where I felt nervous or I felt afraid in some ways of how I was going to say was going to be received, but I spoke anyway, and I said those words anyway, because the words of Audre Lorde rang through my head of when she says that when we speak, we're afraid that our words will not be listened to or heard. But when we are silent, we are also afraid. So it's better to speak knowing that our words are never meant to be heard. I'm definitely quoting her in a bit of a butchered way, but that poem from Your Silence Will Not Protect You really always echoes with me. And I think it's important that we speak our words, even if we are not sure if they will be listened to, but that we speak the truth and we speak it in a strong way, and even if we're afraid. And that's when I think I felt most proud of myself, is when I've done something that I felt afraid to do, but that I did anyway.
Thank you, and thank you for speaking up for all of us. I hope to meet you in person one day. I think that's a sentiment that a lot of people within this group have. So I'm going to turn it over to William right now. Thank you so much Thank you so much, Mikaela. Thank you for your time. All right, and William, switching over to you.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful, and thank you, Mikaela. Similarly, sharing Noelle's sentiment, and that I do hope that we do get to meet someday, and I hope to invite you down to Bermuda as well to join us in the YCS as well again in the future. So once again, we're going to turn over now to Mr. Bodhi Patil, the climate solutionist, who is going to be joining us. He is also studying the connection between ocean health and human health, and is a second-year student in a Master's of Management program at the University of British Columbia, studying oceans, environmental action, and business. Please welcome me in please join me in welcoming Bodhi.
Hey everyone. First of all, I just wanted to share, I'm really excited to be here at BUEI to connect with you all this week. I'm really excited for our cleanup, and I'm here to support all of you in your journeys through the week. And it's all about 360-degree mentorship. So basically, I have so much to learn from all of you as young Bermudians, as young islanders. So I'm really, really stoked about the week. And I'm going to get right into a presentation that I carefully prepared for you guys that I think will add a really interesting insight on exactly how to unlock your ocean and climate superpowers. And first of all, learn what that even means. Before we get into the content of this, I want us to all do a breath. It's something I do at the start of every presentation, because every second breath we take comes from the ocean. So let's take a big, deep inhale. Pretend I can see you, like your cameras are on, so I know if you're not doing this. Take a big, deep inhale and exhale. And so 1/2 of that breath comes from forests in the ocean, sea forests, kelp forests, and photosynthesizing phytoplankton, and 1/2 breath comes from forests on land. And together that makes one world breath. So with every single breath we take, we're actively channeling, connecting with the environment. And it reminds us that it's very much so a part of us. We are nature. And so I'm going to share a little bit about my story today as an ocean climate solutionist, my journey, and most importantly, tools that you can use to unlock your inner climate warrior, be a climate ninja, climate avenger, whatever cool words you want to use to describe that, and kind of know that you have the superpowers within. And so I'm going to also share some tools around eco-anxiety, climate well-being, climate mental health, so that you also can understand some of the things that have worked in my life, worked in the life of my peers, worked in the life of people working with the United Nations, and better understand how you can combat climate anxiety and turn that into inner resiliency, and what the steps to take are there. So I wanted to start with a little story. When I was 6 years old, I loved playing in the tide pools, and this is in Point Roberts, Washington. So on Vancouver, so on the opposite side of the continent, on the West Coast in Canada. And I loved exploring the tide pools, and the ocean was a huge part of my life. And I think as we're born, we're really connected to water. Water flows through our veins. It's 70% of the planet. Our bodies are 70% water. We're inextricably linked to water. It's the one thing that we need every single day to survive. And so water for me was always a huge connective point. It's what I felt most deeply connected to, and also where I felt most deeply at home. And throughout my life, I moved all around the world. I moved to Jakarta, Indonesia, Doha, Qatar. I moved across the West Coast and East Coast of the US and Canada. I moved to a bunch of islands, and I even visited continents like Africa, Australia, and all around really. And I realized that I was like this little tree. And it was almost like I was a little tree or a little mangrove in that second picture, with my root system being pulled out and planted again, and pulled out and planted again, and pulled out and planted again. And I didn't have time to actually set a deep root system. And you'll know from all of the trees here, from so many both endemic and invasive species, that trees need time to grow their roots. And so I didn't feel like I had that. And as a result, I kind of felt like I was walking through a dark tunnel. I was also really anxious about the climate crisis, and I didn't understand what my role in this world was that was changing so quickly. With geopolitical strains, with stressors about climate anxiety, I wasn't sure what I could do, what I could be a part of. And so I was kind of walking down this dark tunnel, but I knew that there was light at the end of the tunnel. And if you're feeling in this sort of way, anxious or stressed, no, it's not just you. Everyone is in this together. And so I realized, with the help of my mom, who's a really cool karate fighter, she's a world champion karate athlete, and she's also a health coach, that there are 3 parts to taking care of yourself: your body, your mind, and your spirit. And if you can have a strong body, a calm mind, and a vibrant spirit, then you can have the inner resiliency you need to have climate resiliency amidst a changing island. And we know what all those stresses are, anything from coral bleaching to sea level rise to ocean warming, etc. We know how closely that's affecting you on your island. So in order to create that resiliency, we need time for our roots to grow. And just like me growing up and getting constantly replanted, I realized that in my home in Vancouver, Canada, I would take time to settle to grow into a deep tree. And what that's done is enable all my branches to grow. And a fun fact about most tree species is the root systems are often longer and larger than what's above the surface. So when you look within, the roots are what you need to cultivate so you can shine without. And that's where I've been led to in my life now as the founder of Inner Light, a youth-led ocean climate action platform, and as well as a training session with companies around the world, working with Patagonia and Google and the X Prize and all sorts of big organizations on transforming their inner kind of work session, work ethic, value system so they can maximize their ocean climate impact. And so today is really important because we're going to be sharing more in an interactive way about what climate mental health and well-being means, because climate mental health and well-being are very different for every people. And we'll start by understanding that climate health and human health are inextricably linked. And within this new emerging field of planetary well-being, which is a very interesting field for any of you who are further interested in studying this connection between ecosystems and human systems and communities and individuals, it's really important to acknowledge that ecological grief exists. And so this is a space across the Youth Climate Summit to acknowledge if you have any ecological grief or ecological anxiety or ego, and understand that this is not something you're facing alone. So to start, I wanted to share a bit what eco-anxiety actually means and how it's defined. So eco-anxiety, or otherwise known as climate anxiety, is distress about climate change and the impacts on people and the planet. And we know we have these feelings like when our shorelines are eroding, or when Zoe mentioned earlier about plastics washing up on Nonsuch. Yesterday, I went there and saw all the debris. We know we have this kind of feeling in our hearts when the cahao aren't able to come back or their habitat are being lost due to sea level rise. And that's an okay feeling to have. That's something we all feel when we're connected to the environment. However, we also have the tools to transform that. So I really wanted to ask you all this question today. Do you feel eco-anxiety? And we have a Mentimeter here that will be in the chat. And I think a lot of you can just answer honestly, right? So yes, no, not sure. Of course, it's a lot more in depth than that. So I would love to see your responses around this, because I think it's a really important emotion and feeling to acknowledge. And on a scientific standpoint, it actually is a new emerging field of science, how people are being affected by ecological stressors, including by some of the largest polluters. And when we look at pollution, we look at energy companies like Mikaela was mentioning, and we have to understand that we have to combat plastic pollution and petroleum usage and fossil fuel proliferation at the source. So it's totally understandable if you do, if you don't, if you're not sure. The whole point is to create more resilient systems within so that you can have the largest impact in the world, so that you can find what you love. And it's interesting to see that a lot of you say not sure. And I think that's something I'm really excited to unpack with you later this week. Of course, the majority says yes. That's consistent with a lot of findings. So I'm really excited to further unpack this, because I think that will really help us to better understand what we can do to transform eco-anxiety. And I just wanted to share, for the 14, 15 of you that said you feel eco-anxiety, that you are not alone, okay? You are not alone. In fact, 75% of young people say the future is frightening. That's by a new study in The Lancet, which is a world-renowned journal on public health that publishes all sorts of things, including things related to biodiversity and nature and health and human systems. So about 7 in 10 young people feel extremely anxious about the future of the climate crisis and where the climate crisis is leading. And it's not something that you have to be sad about or worried about or ashamed of if you feel that way. You first of all have to accept and understand and embrace that feeling, because it's something that we're all feeling. From there, I would love to ask another question, which is a little bit more in depth. It's, how do you deal with eco-anxiety? And there are all sorts of ways to deal with eco-anxiety. We're going to share 3 practical and tangible tools that we can also explore later in this week that can directly help you transform that eco-anxiety. So I'll let you have some time to think about this question, maybe in the classroom, speak with some of your friends, your neighbors, whoever's sitting next to you at your desks, and share a little bit about what you do. I think there are so many ways. We're seeing, channeling your energy or training your anxiousness into climate anxiety, fixing things. Fixing things is a great thing that comes up. I see it a lot when you can't fix the bigger problems of the world. Sometimes you just want to fix something small, and that makes a big difference. Doing things to help. Yes, that's something that's big for me. Even doing a good deed, even helping someone out that doesn't have food, or someone that's houseless, maybe just offering them your granola bar or a snack. I'm not fully sure. That's completely okay. This is what we're going to address next. I participate in volunteer events that help to improve our environment. I think these are all excellent examples. And one of the biggest ones personally that I love is participating in stewardship projects, whether that's planting coral, whether that's looking at the mangroves and removing debris and understanding that they're carbon sinks, cleaning after yourself, cleaning up the environment, helping communities like picking up trash, attending events. Yes, all these are really good answers. I think another one we'll touch on is the importance of building community, the importance of building coalition. I was just speaking to the United Nations Foundation, and for the last about 3 years, I've been working with the United Nations on improving what young people's representation means within various United Nations constituencies, both on the Canadian level and on an international level, focused on small island developing states and large ocean states, which you are here in Bermuda, about making sure that people are understanding that they have a part to play, and young people have some of the solutions to deal with eco-anxiety. So thank you for sharing these. I think they're all really good points. I think let's end on this one, and then I'm going to transition to some of the tools that I've used, some of the things that might be helpful for your life. And this will continue to be a back and forth. So please continue adding to the Menti about updates you think, or responding in the chat about things and ways you deal with eco-anxiety. Venting my problems about the environment to my parents, that's a funny one as well. So I have a really funny lesson and a really funny story. So this is from my own journey of inner light, from like what I said, being like a tree that was uprooted and finally having the time to grow. And my mom, who's the karate master, who's awesome, one of my teachers, one of my mentors, who I asked for help from, was one of my greatest allies in channeling this energy into something else. And she told me something really funny, and I didn't get it at all in the first place. She said, when you're feeling super anxious, don't puke, buke instead. And I didn't really get that. I was like, Mom, what are you talking about? You know, you mentioned you vent your problems to your parents sometimes about the environment. Like, Mom, what are you talking about? Like, I'm stressing out. Like, there's all these things that are changing, land use change, climate change. There's social justice issues like Mikaela was mentioning, like exploring climate justice, environmental justice. These things are so big, Mom. How do I deal with them? She said, buke, breathe, exercise, write, and choose. And I think this is a great acronym because it will stick in your brain, because it's funny. It's like, it's not even funny. It's like just something that you can think of really easily. Don't puke, buke. And let's go over some of these tools. I think we covered the first tool for buke with is breathe at the start, around how our oxygen is produced by the ocean, how we're connected to nature, how we are actually directly a part of nature and nature is a part of us, and there isn't this separation at all. I think a really important tool that you all have access to here is exercise. And I think it's really important to teach and make sure that you know how to swim and make sure that you're comfortable in the ocean as a young islander so that you can access all that the ocean has to offer. And swimming, going outside, making sure you're spending time moving your body is so important. You all know that. So I won't tell you too much about it. Another one that's really important is writing. I think I didn't realize the importance of writing. And I know some of the other Youth Climate alumni shared that the importance of writing down their stories for none such, the importance about writing about plastic pollution, the importance about all of these things. Writing is such a powerful tool, both for your climate advocacy and for your self-help and well-being. And sometimes I really like to write down just to-do lists, and it helps me clear my mind. So that's something you might use when you're feeling stressed or anxious about the climate crisis. And I think choosing is really important. You can choose how you want to feel. You can choose what you want to do. You can choose what you want to eat. You can choose all these things. And the power of your choice in driving systems change is something that you might think is weak, but is much more powerful than you might ever believe it to be. And just giving a brief example. So I was basically putting up a fight against the largest deep sea threat, which is deep sea mining, which is like clear cutting a forest, but doing it on the bottom of the ocean. So all these companies wanted to do deep sea mining. And me and my friends got together at our school with a bunch of organizations, including Greenpeace, including some of the largest global organizations on working on oceans and climate action. And we said, hey, we have to make sure deep sea mining does not happen, because that would destroy the deep sea environment. And we know from what we eat in fish, we know from what you all get to experience with seafood, that protecting the ocean, protecting seafood that feeds 3 billion people is so important. So I chose to take initiative towards protecting the deep sea, and I chose to take action. I chose to put my time in there, and that actually led to a policy change within the government of Canada to have a deep seabed mining moratorium, which stopped that from ever happening and ever will happening, license permits to Canadian companies to mine the deep sea. So that's one specific example. I have many more I'm excited to share with you all this week. And I think it's really important that we remember we have autonomy over our choice, and we are powerful creators. I think this is also a really important note. So I actually got the chance to present to Kamala Harris, which is the Vice President of the United States, around this exact concept, climate health and human health. And during that time, it was all about eco-anxiety and how the health of our climate directly relates to our health, because when we're healthier, when young people are better equipped with electrified public transit, when young people have better access to education, better access to the environment, our health and well-being improves. This is scientifically proven. Simultaneously, when we're able to do that, the health of the ecosystems around our environments and this multiplicity also improves. So there's this direct correlation of human health and climate health. And it reminds me of something really funny that I thought of and kind of built a program on social media around, and it's the Climate Avengers. So we're all climate Avengers, right? Whether that's doing something really simple and doing something like just using a certain type of alternative single-use plastic alternative. So using different sorts of multi-use plastics, whatever that is, or it's more systemic, like looking at blue carbon ecosystems and how you can protect the mangroves and seagrass in Bermuda, or looking at how you can work with the government and this new program to actually get youth on board so they're thinking about what power sources we're using, or trying to help the island go renewable and looking at tidal energy, looking at wind energy, looking at offshore solar and offshore wind, and putting up microgrids like some of the other alumni mentioned today. Like, all these are powerful tools, and it reminds you that you are a transformer, you're a climate avenger. And so remember that, because that will be key, I think, to your journey. One other question that I know Javanique asked yesterday is, what brings you hope? And I want to ask this question again, and I want to ask you in a different way. I mean, what brings you as a human, you as a young person, you as a young islander, hope for the future of the island? So getting more specific towards the needs and interests of yourself and the hopes for Bermuda going into the future. What brings you that hope? And even if you want to add to this question, what do you aspire to do that will help you have more hope? Because I think our actions can directly result in hope. And while that's being pulled up and while you're sharing your responses, I wanted to share a very important concept called evidence-based hope. And evidence-based hope is the trajectory of different types of shifts and transformations as it relates to positive climate action. So we're seeing for the first time fossil fuel subsidies shifting to electric vehicle subsidies. And although that's not a systemic solution, that started the ways that we need evidence to show that we have hope in reducing greenhouse gas emissions and getting to the UN Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. So I think there's so many different things that gives us hope. Other people waking up, oh man, that's awesome. I'm pretty stoked when I wake up. God, faith, religion, there's so many solutions. Yes, that's a big one that gives me hope. Knowing that behind something negative, there's always something positive. I love that. Knowing that food, I love that too. I love food. Who doesn't? Seeing other young people trying to improve our environment, definitely that's something that gives me hope, and that's something that will continue to give me hope. I'll share a brief story on that before wrapping towards the end of the presentation. People who also take action. So around young people helping the environment, 3 years ago, I co-created an organization called Ocean Uprise. I know some of you participated in our internship, which gave you all the tools in 6 weeks. You needed to start your own ocean project and upscale that both locally and on the island and globally. And it's really exciting because what I see every day is young people around the world taking action, whether that's something as small as a beach cleanup or community education, or whether that's something as big as advocating on the international stage at the UN General Assembly. Our young people within our Ocean Uprise community are upscaling their action, upscaling their impact. And it's all because they're channeling this energy, this insecurity around the climate crisis that we all face into action. I think that brings me a lot of hope. Knowing people care, knowing people that are trying to make a change. The Youth Climate Summit, I'm glad someone mentioned that. Yes, I think community building is such an important means to bring you hope. So just getting towards wrapping up, and then I really wanted to share a lot of useful tools and address your questions directly, is this phrase, you are a powerful creator. And I think there's another thing that actually through science changes your brain chemistry. It's smiling. So my dad told me when I was a kid, when I wake up, I need to smile because it'll actually make me feel happier. And actually, when you smile, you can try to make your friend laugh, or just smile. You actually change your brain chemistry. So there's a chemical reaction happening in your brain where you're actually becoming more positive and inclined. And this is directly proven to show how we're better equipped and able to connect, be grounded, be present, but also in a stretch that takes us towards pushing for climate action, pushing towards this systemic change that we're all working towards, both on the islands, both on this island and islands around the planet. I think you're also equipped with very transformative tools because everyone already addressed how do you address eco-anxiety. Everyone already addressed how do you bring hope. And I think within your community, within Bermuda, you have some very, very strong allies in your peers in building towards these systemic actions. So whatever you do, what Mikaela said, what everyone has said today, what I was presenting on early to the UN Foundation, don't give up, keep going. We got to keep going and ask for help, because help is also a big reason that gives me hope, because people are willing to help. So I just want to end on these two pictures. It's basically a tree heart shaped and a coral heart shape that I see all the time underwater. And it's that if we center love, if we center connection, if we center these indigenous values that are around the world of kinship and reciprocity in climate action, the systems change and the level of impact we have scales exponentially. And whether you look at that from an investment and business perspective in ocean solutions, which we'll get into another time, or whether you look at that as just helping out a friend or helping out someone that's suffering, or helping out a seal at the beach that's entangled in debris. Here, obviously, it wouldn't be a seal. Maybe it's some sort of leopard, shark, or ray that might be entangled, and better understanding how you can protect them. Those are all things that you do out of love, out of connection. So continuing to foster that love and connection is imperative to your action. I'll leave this up for a second. I don't know if everyone has phones to scan this, but if you want to scan this and reach out, please do. I'm here all week. I would love to connect with you all. I would love to unpack anything that you need help with. Consider me an open book. I'm happy to share. I'm happy to learn. I'm happy to do anything that you all need. And yeah, I'm just really, really grateful to be on your beautiful island again. And I'm really excited to see you all tomorrow. And here is my Instagram. If you want to give me, feel free to DM me. That's the easiest way to reach me. And I know now we are going to open it up to questions. And while people are thinking of their questions, I would love to just go back to that response on what gives you hope, because I think there's some really great ones in the middle that we should also read aloud. Thank you.
Well, and thank you so much, Bodhi. I mean, I feel so much more hopeful already, even just between yourself and Mikaela's presentations today. Once again, keep on typing your questions in for Bodhi in the chat, and do please reach out to him directly as well as he's asked. But absolutely, I feel that everything you've shared gives us a lot of tools, certainly to look forward at this system change that is ahead of us, certainly with a much greater degree of hope. I'd really like to know, Bodhi, where you began to find these concepts around realistic hope and evidence-based hope, and if you could tell us a little bit more even about what more evidence-based hope you've seen. You'd mentioned directing subsidies away from fossil fuel industries.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of evidence-based hope. I'll bring out one, and then I'll also address a question that I got directly. So one thing that gives me evidence-based hope is the High Seas Treaty. So as you all know, most of this planet is ocean, and most of the ocean is not under federal governance. So Bermuda has an exclusive economic zone, basically a line that you drew all around the island, X numbers of miles out. I'm not sure how big the EEZ is here. If someone knows, fun fact, let me know. And basically offshore, that's Bermudian waters. But as soon as you get out of those waters, and as soon as you're not in waters of international folks, then you're in international waters. And those are the waters that aren't governed. And that's where a lot of overfishing, that's where a lot of high seas violations and exploitation, that's where a lot of high seas death actually occurs. And there's a lot of plundering the ocean, essentially, with all sorts of deep seabed fishing, drag netting, etc. And so one thing that gives me hope is is evidence-based hope. The UN General Assembly, I presented to 150 world leaders, heads of state, governance officials, etc., and we actually called for a high seas treaty. And the next day, in collaboration with Jane Fonda, I think kids and all the YCS participants, maybe you don't know who Jane Fonda is, but she's an awesome older generational activist. And basically, they actually signed on 80 countries for the first time in history in 40 years to a high seas treaty, which is going to create a framework to protect the high seas in a more impactful, more systemic way. And so this is going to start happening in the marine protected area designs plans in 2024. That gives me hope. I have millions of examples that give me hope, but in terms of the biggest space on the planet, which is the ocean, which is why we're at the Underwater Exploration Institute, there is so much to protect out there. And that is such a reason for why I'm feeling hopeful, and I'm feeling not so sad anymore about this, because I feel like we all have a lot to do and a lot of impact we can make. Yeah.
Wonderful, thank you. And Bodhi, if I can ask as well, a question in from Summersfield. I'd like to know how you promoted yourself and the ideas that you have, and how you found yourself in the positions that you've worked towards.
That's a great idea, Summersfield. That's a great question from the Academy. Wow. So I think there are so many innovative ways that you can advocate for yourself as a young activist, as a young advocate, as a young solutionist. So what I decided to do was do a rebrand. I didn't want to be considered an activist when most of the things that I was doing was actually bringing solutions to the table. So I was looking at artificial AI intelligence, basically to monitor and track fish and catch and bycatch on the high seas. I was looking at ways to create blue carbon markets for mangroves that were being restored in Colombia. I was looking at ways to innovate with invasive species, use invasive species material like lionfish for bathing suit material, for food products, etc. So I wanted to be a solutionist. So I just decided to rebrand myself as a solutionist. And I had the fortune and privilege, and also the guts to ask a mentor to go to the UN Oceans Conference. And I went to the UN Oceans Conference, and I met Aquaman there, Jason Momoa, and also the UN Secretary General. And I basically pitched them an idea around creating a next-gen youth office at the United Nations, and basically having that supported by youth through intergenerational collaboration. 4 months later, after working with the UN Secretary General and also the Ambassador for the Ocean, that happened. And now there's a UN Youth Office. It's as a result of thousands of youth all around the world. And that one small push that I made as a person, that my peers and friends made a little bit of difference. And every little push made an incremental difference. So I think asking for help is huge to promote yourself and your ideas. And it's also really important to know that what you have to share is what people want to hear. Older generations want to support youth. And when an adult or when a government leader or when anyone here on island or globally, as you'll see as you go to college or wherever you do next, they want to support next gen. And when they say, hey, you guys give us hope, say, hey, That's great. And we need your funding. We need your support. We need your mentorship. We need your resources in order to deliver the impact to help this planet. It's more than just depending on us. We need your support. So that's this intergenerational component. Sorry for blabbing on. That was too long, guys.
No, please. No. Bodhi, I think we'd like to hear everything that you have to say as well. And I'm sorry we don't have more time to ask more questions. But again, Bodhi is going to be on island here with us for a little bit. And I strongly encourage everyone in the call too to approach him and to have a chat with him as well while he's here and while you guys engage with him at BUEI over the next couple of days. We do have some more questions in chat that I'd really like to get to. We do have to bring in the Menti poll as well, in which we're going to be asking you guys what is really resonating with you personally with Bodhi's presentation. There was certainly a lot there that absolutely felt as if he was speaking directly to my heart and Noel's heart too. And again, looking at your responses here, yeah, it is okay. It is totally okay to be nervous about this and to feel that you don't understand something. But in having these conversations and in sharing this hope, we do find ourselves in a better place of understanding and therefore more encouraged and more supported in taking action too.
Don't
Yep,
puke.
we do like don't puke. Yeah, the determination and ambition, absolutely. Methodology and creation of new methods as well is really important. I'm sure that many of us hadn't even heard of the terms solutionist really when we were growing up, that these are new roles that we can create and new ways to design approaches to changing systems. Yep. Gaining youth attention and training, yeah.
I haven't heard that one. I'm excited to learn more about that acronym as well.
It's an interesting and popular one apparently, but yep, smiling. Yeah, it's really important that Bodhi brought up that the chemical reaction that does occur when you do smile, and it is really true. And I encourage you all as well, anyone with a STEM background even, to look into that. But there are good ways to cope, absolutely. And talking about this certainly can be one of those grounding methods in which we accept that the hope that we are feeling and the anxieties that we're feeling are justified. Yeah, staying positive. There's lots of ways in which we can do so, and thank you as well to Bodhi for sharing so many of the ways in which we can help each other stay positive. Once more, I thought that personally Bodhi's analysis of connecting yourself back to nature is really, really, really essential to this, of understanding that we are a part of this and that the world changing around us does affect us and it does change us. So now I think we are going to head on over to our final Menti poll, and I'm going to turn over now to our host Noel to bring up the last poll for the day.
All right, guys, as William said, our final activity of the day is some Mentimeter questions. So please go back to your Menti browser window. If you need it, the link is in the chat. And again, if you can't access Menti, put your responses in the chat and William and I will add them for you. So I want to make a word cloud of your talents, your interests, abilities, and skills. So for example, I am a great dog trainer. And I'm interested and educated in innovative techniques for growing fish and plants for food. You can submit as many answers as you like. Reading is in big and bold. That's fantastic, guys. And it's a crucial skill. It's a life skill at this point. Our second question is, what climate-related topic is most important to you? I've also been informed that there are over 150 of you in this room, not including the teachers, who are voicing the opinions of rooms full of people. And thank you again to the teachers for your support. We really do appreciate it. Okay. Energy is the largest word that we have on this poll, and that is for the topics that are most important to you. Fight, energy, and reading. And our, sorry, hold on. Apologies, guys. All right, so now what I want you to do is combine the two of those things. So how do you think you can use some of your hobbies and talents to make a difference in the climate space that interests you most? It's a bit of a complicated question, but just have a think about that. How can you tie those two things together? So let's see. Yep, your passions and your talents can be used. Let's see. Through different forms of art. You can create artwork to create awareness. That's great. And to encourage those to make a difference. Let's see. Have a better understanding of the topic. So when it's time to speak about it, I won't struggle and I'll know what I'm talking about. Reading will help. Yeah, that is true. So I wouldn't call that reading, I'd call that research, right? And researching is actually a skill. How do you kind of filter out that important information from all of those large documents or those websites full of info? Let's see, more awareness. All right. And instead of staring at the ceiling, doing nothing, I could think about things I want to do for the environment. That's really cool. That's a change of hobby, right? Relaxation itself can be a hobby and an interest. All right, so now I am going to wrap up. All right, so I want to express my gratitude to each of you for your passion, insights, and commitment to addressing climate challenges. And thank you to BUEI, of course, the local schools, and of course our sponsors, HSBC and AXA for supporting Bermuda's youth. Tomorrow marks an exciting transition when we'll all come together in person to continue these crucial conversations. So I am going to say goodbye and pass the mic over to William, and I look forward to seeing you all in person tomorrow.
Thank you very much, Noelle. And once again, we do encourage you all to please have your project action slips for Cooper's Island signed, and to please join us at the action project on Saturday. And as well tomorrow, we are very much looking forward to welcoming you all to BUEI, where you will have the opportunity to meet with and learn from our local organizations that support Bermuda's environmental causes already. And as well, we have our wonderful guest activists, Javonik, Bodhi, and Ella here on site to meet you and to discuss with you. So we're also going to be hearing from our presentations from those youth activist partners, from our local NGOs, and for discussions as well with your 2022 YCS alumni. So we will also welcome you back on Friday for your turn and your voice, where we are going to be hearing panel discussions and presentations from your activists and alumni, and to facilitate the creation of your very own climate action projects, once again centered around sustainability, conservation, and climate justice. So we look forward to hearing from you all then and seeing you and supporting your action on Friday. Thank you so much all for joining us.